What up? It's your boy Nick Incredible, man. And yes, I am back at it again. And I apologize yet again. I had a super busy week, man. But I am here now, man. This is 911 Season 5, Episode 6, Brawl in Cell Block 911. That title just screams awesome, man. Let's get into this episode.
Yo, fight until you make it, yo, don't think it, no, just take it. Don't wait for someone to break it, take control, then don't just take it. Hey, you can make it happen, you just gotta take some action. Take the ship and be the captain.
To be fair, going into this episode, I honestly thought that it was going to be your typical cell block episode. And then as we progressed and started watching the episode, we have the cellmate starting the riot, them changing clothes with the guards and beating the guards up so bad that you really couldn't recognize them. So, I thought it was going to be your typical cell block episode. They were going to try to escape. They did escape with Eddie and Buck, and they were trying to go on a run or something like that, I thought. But this episode had so much more depth to it than I initially thought. I thought it was going to be your simple, okay, where they escape the prison, they're going to try to run or hurt somebody or something, and they put on the guard's clothing. That's what happens in a cell block movie or TV show. That's what happens when they escape prison. But like I said, this episode had so much more depth than I was initially giving it, and it actually really paid off, man. The guards, got attacked and the cellmates took over the prison. True. Evident, and it's done pretty much every time the same way. But this episode of 911 brought it and done it completely different than normal or any other series in my book, because the dude had a specific reason why he was trying to escape. In this episode, we get to see Ravi step up a little bit. I really enjoyed seeing Ravi, step up and kind of volunteer himself to go out to do it, because he was the only one left that could do it. But we see it kind of affected Ravi a little bit too, because after doing it, he was a little shocked because he was terrified of these cellmates, and he was of these prisoners. He was scared, man. And at the end of the episode, we see that kind of weighed heavily on him. And good thing Bobby kind of noticed, because it might have would have messed with him or even got him to the point to where he didn't want to be a firefighter anymore. So Bobby noticed and decided to take him to a cafe to where they can just sit down and relax with the noise. He didn't need any quiet. He wanted noise to kind of just drown out everything that was going on. So Bobby took notice of that and kind of helped Ravi through the situation that he was going through. Honestly, what I really enjoyed about this episode, more than the actual storyline of the prisoner escaping and trying to help his son, was the fact that we get to see him actually do some doctor stuff, because we're six episodes in this season, and to be fair, I honestly thought they forgot about it, because they haven't mentioned him being a doctor or going to medical school at all. To be fair, I know there's a lot of other stuff going on in the season right now, so I can kind of see why that wasn't the main focus. But I was just wondering in the back of my mind, like, are we ever going to discuss that Hen is going to medical school, or did she drop out, or what's going on? And this episode really highlighted the fact that she's going to medical school and she's learning some things, because the doctor was talking to her and everything, and she ended up having to be the one to kind of suture that guy and help him without, I want to say his arteries, kind of stitch his arteries back together to help him so he wouldn't die on the table, because the doctor messed up his hand. And he gave her huge props and everything. And I felt like that meant the world to Hen, because at the end of the episode, we see that, she's been working hard for the past 24 hours, been trapped in a prison and being waiting at the hospital. Now she has to go to class in an hour, and she hasn't had any sleep or anything like that. But she was like, I'm going to go be a general surgeon. Now she figured out what she wanted to, major in for medical school. Like, so now they're just giving us all this abundance of him going to medical school when we haven't gotten any this entire season. But I'm really glad that they decided to focus on that yet again, because it felt a little lax, because they never even mentioned it thus far. Let's talk about Buck and Eddie, man. Buck and Eddie, they always seem to find themselves in just like the worst situations, man. So like I mentioned about this episode, the dude escaped prison with his buddy, and after they just mollywopped the guards, but he didn't want the guards to die. He wanted them to actually be saved, because he needed them to get him to that hospital, because he wanted to save his son. Now, then we go in this whole story about, him dating this woman, and she turned him in. She testified at his trial, but he had a son, and he doesn't want his son to be a criminal like he did, so he stayed out of his son's life. But his son is dying because of a congenital heart disease, so he decided to give his son his heart. But him being a death row inmate, because of the law and then the state of California, death row inmates can't give organs to family or anybody else. They just can't. That's the law. And watching this episode, it felt a little heartbreaking, because sure, his mind is in the right place, and even though he's committed some atrocities and everything, but he wanted to do the right thing. And it's not like he wanted to donate to anybody in particular. It was his son. And I mean, I know the law is the law, a lot of times, but sometimes the law is just wrong and unfair, man. A lot of times it's okay. I mean, for some people, but a lot of times, man, the law just, sure, you can always find workarounds around it, but like sometimes the law, man, it's just, I don't want to say it gets in the way, but like it's not as helpful as it should be. And the dude, he found a workaround around it. He killed himself, and they still wasn't going to let him do it because he was still a death row inmate. But Athena and her captain, kind of found a way to convince the governor to actually get the dude to be able to, transplant his heart. I can't remember what she called it. A contrition or something, an act of contrition or something like that. I think that's what she called it. But anyway, that allowed him to have the surgery to transplant his heart into his son's. And I feel like that was just a nice outcome. He still didn't get a chance to see him, but he was totally okay with that, because he didn't want to screw his son up and be like what his father was to him. He wanted to break that cycle. So even if him not seeing his son, him just getting his heart is what made him happy and feel better. And the fact that he doesn't want his son to know where the heart came from, that just speaks volumes. And that really elevated this episode for me, instead of it just being your typical, oh, well, they broke out of prison and they're doing this. No, it was so much more going into this episode, especially for this father to sacrifice himself for his son. And then we see at the end of the episode, Eddie's, there with Christopher, and it just had this real connection moment throughout this entire episode. Even though it felt kind of short for me, it just had this really beautiful connection moment. And we see everybody at the end, kind of going through, I don't want to say the motions, but kind of just going through their feelings a little bit after dealing with everything that happened with this particular case, man. The episode was short, if you ask me, because it all revolved around the same thing. Like, we didn't branch off and focus on any other thing this entire episode. We saw Josh, but that's about it. So I really like this episode, even though we didn't get to see a bunch of other people or have multiple cases this episode. I really, really enjoyed this episode because of the message that it got through. And it was nice, man. I kind of feel bad that the dude had to kill himself, but I like the fact that his sacrifice allowed him to help his son, man. And that was a really, really beautiful scene. And overall, the episode was nice. I really enjoyed it. It turned out way better than I expected it to be, watching the opening scene in the beginning of it, man. This is your boy, Nick Incredible. Don't forget to smash the like button till you can't smash it anymore. Comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them, and subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. Peace out.